Starting this broadcast from United Kingdom, police and protesters clashed again in Northern Ireland's Londonderry. And this came after an annual march which marks the anniversary of the ending of the 1689 siege of Derry. Petrol bombs, fireworks and heavy masonry were thrown during the disorder, injuring over 10 officers. A total of 20 officers were hurt in the police operations. And the Superintendent of Police of Derry City, Anne Strabane, called the incident quote-unquote disgusting, promising a robust investigation to bring all those responsible for the violence to justice. So far, a 46-year-old man has been arrested and charged with disorderly behaviour. The violent scenes in the city follow nightly disturbances in Belfast, where Muslim businesses were burnt down, houses were targeted, in what police called racially motivated attacks. As rioting and disorder continue in the city, up to 15,000 people took part in a peaceful anti-racism protest. Besides Belfast, London, Glasgow and numerous other towns and cities in the UK saw crowds massing to protest the disorder blamed on the far-right anti-immigrant, and in the wake of the Southport knife attack that killed 3 children. Britain's Home Secretary wrote for the Telegraph newspaper saying that the recent riots have caused the British people to lose respect for the police. Cooper pledged to restore the public's faith in the law. She termed the riots disgraceful attempted assault on the rule of law itself, warning that would-be rioters that the streets would be flooded with police this week.
The loved ones who have been lost and the children who are...
And for more on this, writer and political commentator Adam Schwartz is joining us live from London. Thank you so much for joining us here on WION. Good to see you. I want to first gauge what the Prime Minister is doing. Now, Keir Starmer was the Chief Prosecutor of England and Wales during the last civil unrest in the United Kingdom. Today he's the Prime Minister. I want to ask you, why has he failed to stop the violence?
Well, I would actually say that Keir Starmer has done quite a good job at trying to quell the unrest, to be honest. I mean, the fact is that the government doesn't have complete control over the police because the police operate as an independent force in the UK for various reasons, and so actually there are limitations in terms of what the government can do in terms of law and order. But in terms of what he has been able to do, he's been able to sort of give the police all the encouragement that they've needed to try to control some of these riots when they've been happening, mostly when they happened the weekend before last. The other thing that he's also done is try to kind of prime the judiciary and the court system to enable very swift justice against those who've been arrested. We've seen around 1,000 people arrested from those riots so far. A couple of hundred of them have been charged already, and several of them have actually already received very harsh prison sentences. And given the fact that actually we may well have seen more rioting happen since then, and it actually hasn't really materialized, I think really that shows that there has been a deterrent effect from the fact that the police and the government have clearly wanted to deliver quite swift justice against those who've been involved in this. I think clearly that has served as a deterrent effect. So I think, Keir Starmer has actually performed quite well from this crisis. But as I mentioned, the government and not the police force, he has limitations.
Right. Ms. Schwartz, since you speak about the police, Britain's Home Secretary has said that the chaos has the British police lose respect for the police. What do you make of that assessment then?
Well, I think no one can look at the scenes in the UK from the last couple of weeks and say there are clearly not issues to do with law and order. And, that is backed up by survey data that we have that shows there has really been growing mistrust in the police over the last kind of 7 or 8 years. I think the Home Secretary's comments are true in some respects. I think, they kind of can largely be attributed, I would say, to kind of 3 major reasons. The first is that we've had major public sector cuts to both the police services and prison services really since 2010. And that has really kind of limited the police enforcement capacity, but also the court capacity to kind of deliver long and harsh sentences. So I think really that's had a problem in terms of trying to create a kind of deterrent for crime. Secondly, I think we've had some pretty major public scandals to do with the culture within the police. We had a horrible issue where a young woman, Sarah Everard, was kidnapped and raped and murdered by police. I think that and other scandals really led to many issues that really cut through to the public. And finally, I would say that there's really been sort of a growth of what I would describe as sort of non-state digital actors, particularly social media companies, which has really shifted power away from the state and really towards individuals, which has led to some people feeling very empowered to kind of incite violence and to create hatred online in a way that they wouldn't do in person. So I think, again, the kind of lack of police enforcement in that respect has led to, lack of respect for the police. But the final point I would make is that I think we can distinguish a general lack of trust in the police across the population from really the issues that we had with these far-right rioters, which I think is much more specific to kind of extremism, but also disinformation that we've seen online.
All right, if we could quickly zoom out a little, the protest started over fake news about the killer's identity in Southport, but it has ballooned so far. Do you think that it has brought the general psyche of how Britons look at immigrants?
I mean, clearly that was the intention of far-right rioters, when they put out or reacted some of this disinformation about the nature of the suspect involved in this horrific tragedy. I think for me personally, I don't think that when a time when we have minorities and people of colour across the society being terrified for their safety because of these riots, that is an appropriate time to be kind of discussing immigration and the composition of society. I think we can't reward this kind of racist violence with some kind of policy reaction that tries to address their concerns. I think there are ways to kind of deal with these larger issues, but certainly that has to be done sensitively and not, in responding to some kind of racist violence. I think there are clearly general problems in society to do with social cohesion, which I think can be addressed. But I think certainly, it would be inappropriate for the government to try to kind of give in to what these rioters want, which really is not aligned with the general British public, which is to stop all immigration, essentially.
All right, Mr. Schwartz, before I let you go, there are a lot of non-white Britons who are also fearful for their own lives and security because of the protests that we are seeing across the country. How is the Keir Starmer government reassuring them that they are safe in their own country?
Well, I think one of his first reactions is try to give the police all the support that they need to try to keep those communities safe. We've seen government ministers and the Prime Minister as well reaching out to a whole bunch of different community leaders of different faiths and ethnicities and backgrounds, really to try to reassure them that their place is in the UK. Of course, anyone will be unsettled by what we've seen, particularly the kind of racist violence aspects of it. But I think ultimately the Prime Minister's role in this is to try to bring communities together, to try to create sort of social cohesion programs. Really data shows that actually one thing that leads to reduced racism across society in general is actually integration and trying to kind of expose people to different groups and cultures. So I think really, the government can certainly go further in that sense. But I think clearly, it's so important for any British citizen, regardless of their background, to actually feel safe, and not just British citizens, but also the migrants that are currently in the UK. So I think, Keir Starmer will try to do everything he can to restore national unity in that respect.
All right, Adam Schwartz, thank you so much for joining us from London and getting us all those insights.
Good to be with you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.